Alright, I'm gonna give my honest rankings of the greatest movies of all time. Some of you guys might be a little bit unhappy with how this goes down. In order to qualify for this tier list, the movie has to be in the Sight and Sound Top 250. And if you don't know what that is, it's basically the holy bible for internet movie buffs. And I picked the top 50 movies that I wanted to talk about the most. Citizen Kane, supposedly the third greatest film of all time according to the British Film Institute. Orson Welles, he's a genius. He compiled all of the most interesting cinematography and editing techniques, and as a result, you essentially got the first modern film. Every movie that has come out after Citizen Kane is in some way influenced by this movie. I'm gonna have to put it into the yeah, it's good, whatever tier. I'm not denying its greatness, okay, but if someone came up to me right now and said, what do you want to watch tonight? Citizen Kane or John Wick 2? I mean, where do you think I'm gonna put Pulp Fiction? Yeah, this is an infinite rewatch. And don't try to lie to me in the comments and tell me that you don't love Pulp Fiction. I know you love Pulp Fiction. And if you actually don't, okay, fine, that's valid. It does have its issues. I'm not saying it's the greatest movie ever. Although, according to the British Film Institute, it's the 129th best movie of all time. I'll take that. I've probably seen Pulp Fiction at least 10 times throughout my life, and it's awesome every single time. So I would be lying if I said it's not one of my favorite movies. Yeah, it would be cooler if I could come up here and say, oh, I've seen Citizen Kane 15 times and it never gets old. But I'd be lying if I said that. I've seen it one time and that was as many times as I ever want to watch it. Pulp Fiction, I could pop it in right now and have a great time watching it. So, I mean, I can't put it in anything other than the infinite rewatch tier. Apparently Get Out is the 95th best movie of all time according to the British Film Institute. Yeah, I don't know about that one. I'm not saying Get Out isn't a great movie, okay? I love Get Out. But yeah, I'm gonna have to put Get Out into the Y tier because I really just don't know what the British Film Institute was thinking with this one. It's not that good. If you take away the social commentary of this movie, it's basically a B+ thriller movie. Good, but it's not like a legendary film. And yeah, you definitely do gotta give some credit to the social commentary for pointing out the truth, but it's not like it was some mind-blowing new revelation. 2001: A Space Odyssey, garbage, trash. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, 2001: A Space Odyssey. I'm gonna put that into the cream of the crop. It's not a type of movie where I can just put it on any night of the week and have a great time watching it. No, I have to be in a very specific mood to actually be down to watch 2001: A Space Odyssey. But when you actually are in the right mood to watch 2001: A Space Odyssey, you are simply witnessing something that transcends cinema. I mean, yeah, it's some good stuff. It literally cuts from some fucking caveman beating each other with bones to a jump cut to a fucking nuclear satellite with the Blue Danube playing. Like, legendary stuff. In the Mood for Love, Wong Kar-wai. Okay, don't get mad. I'm sorry, this movie just isn't for me. I'm not saying I don't recommend watching the movie. You haven't seen In the Mood for Love. I don't really like the movie, but I'm not saying I don't recommend it. That's why it's going into the I'm sorry tier and not the Y tier. I get why everyone loves it so much. I'm just personally not super into those kind of melancholy dramas. Every single aspect of the filmmaking in this movie is absolute perfection. It's just not my speed, okay? I would probably compare this movie to listening to a Radiohead album or something. Yeah, I respect it. I respect the amazing songwriting and composition, but at the same time, I'm just rarely in the mood to listen to some melancholy, sad shit. You know what I mean? But one thing I will say, apparently this is the 5th best movie of all time. They have it ranked ahead of 2001: A Space Odyssey. I'm definitely not one to talk when it comes to having some whack rankings of movies. Okay, I'll admit it. In the Mood for Love is better than 2001: A Space Odyssey. That just seems a little wild to me. I mean, like, yeah, it does belong on the list. I'm fine with that, but really? Better than 2001: A Space Odyssey? Okay, all right. The Battle of Algiers definitely goes into the cream of the crop. I will say you have to be in the right mood to watch this movie. It's some heavy stuff, man. I mean, I'm not going to spoil anything even though it is based on true events, but this movie tells you more about geopolitical conflicts than any other movie I have ever seen in my entire life. It is legitimately a movie that changed my entire perspective on the world and history. Okay, Mulholland Drive, probably my favorite movie of all time, at least in my top two. It's between Mulholland Drive and Fellowship of the Ring. The first time I watched Mulholland Drive, I may or may not have consumed some fungi before watching it, and that definitely helped the experience a lot, which, by the way, don't do what I did. Bad idea. I don't do that stuff anymore. It's definitely one of the craziest movie watching experiences I've ever had, but I have rewatched this movie so many times since then. It never gets old. One thing that this movie does not get enough credit for is how funny it is. This movie is absolutely hilarious, on top of just being one of the best psychological thrillers ever made. And also, R.I.P. David Lynch, one of the greatest filmmakers of all time, absolute legend. All right, Blue Velvet. I'm going to put this into the proper classic tier. I think that Blue Velvet is the perfect entryway into David Lynch's filmography. I mean, it is a weird movie and it has all of the things that makes David Lynch so great, but it is a little bit more normal, I guess, than pretty much any of his other movies other than The Straight Story. And if you've seen Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window, Blue Velvet is basically Rear Window, except with David Lynch's genius, wacky mind added on top of it. This is definitely where some people are probably going to get mad at me. Stalker just ain't my thing. I'm sorry. Again, same thing with In the Mood for Love. I'm not saying I don't recommend this movie. If you haven't seen Stalker, don't let me dissuade you from watching this movie. Check out Stalker. It legitimately might become one of your favorite movies of all time. There's a lot of people who will tell you Stalker is the best movie they have ever seen. I wish I was one of you, okay? I wish I was on your level. I just gotta be real though. This movie just did not click with me at all. I understand why so many people like it. If you're super into extremely slow-paced, beautifully shot movies with people discussing philosophy for 3 hours, you will love this movie. I don't have any objective criticisms of this movie, okay? I just didn't enjoy it. And at the end of the day, that is really the whole point of watching movies, is to just enjoy it, okay? So yeah, I just want to say, if a movie is incredibly acclaimed by everyone thinks it's a masterpiece, but you don't enjoy it, that's fine. Or if everyone thinks this movie sucks, but you enjoy it, again, that is fine. Ingmar Bergman's Persona definitely goes into the cream of the crop. This movie, in my opinion, is the single best example I have seen of using blocking, lighting, and shadows to convey the storytelling. If you just read the script of this movie, you would have no idea what this movie is actually about, but it's just about the vibes, man. Ingmar Bergman, absolute genius behind the camera. The way he blocks the characters and uses shadows to convey the themes and the storytelling in this movie, it is absolutely brilliant. And I know that sounds like kind of a pedantic reason to like a movie, but it also is a very lean, tight movie. It's like an hour and a half. It kind of flies by, at least it did for me. I was really entertained by it. Okay, The Seventh Seal, another Ingmar Bergman film. I'm gonna have to say, yeah, it's good, whatever. I know it's kind of weird that I just glazed up Persona so much, but then when it comes to The Seventh Seal, I don't know, it's good. It's just not really like that much of a mind-blowing experience. I thought it was good. I thought it was interesting. It has a lot of the same aspects that made Persona so great. It just didn't have the same lean entertainment value that Persona provided, if that makes sense. Okay, Suspiria, the 1977 Italian giallo slasher movie. This is a very weird movie to try to rank in a tier list because it does some things so immaculately well, mainly just everything about the aesthetics. This is probably one of the best uses of Technicolor of all time. The sets are absolutely unreal, and it's also got this earworm soundtrack that just gets in your head, and it's kind of catchy. It just makes you really get into the vibe of this movie. But at the same time, holy shit, is this not one of the cheesiest, most poorly acted movies I've ever seen? And yeah, that definitely does kind of add to the charm in the movie, but at the same time, it was a little bit of a chore to sit through. I'm gonna put Suspiria into the Y tier. I do think it is a good movie overall, just because of how awesome the Technicolor is, how awesome this movie looks, and that soundtrack. The vibes of this movie are immaculate, but yeah, I don't know if that is enough to carry this movie into the top 250 movies of all time. Bicycle Thieves, yeah, it's good, whatever. Honestly, probably should be at least in the proper classic tier, but it does get debuffed in my books because I watched this movie in my high school history class, and you know how anytime you watch a movie at school, it just, like, even if it is a great movie, it does just kind of make it less interesting than a movie you just chose to watch in your free time, if that makes sense. I mean, it is a really good movie, and if you're a history person, you'll probably love it. Magnolia. Apparently this is the 185th best movie of all time. I mean, that's not super high up on the list, but at the same time, why out of all Paul Thomas Anderson movies is this the one that makes it? Why is Boogie Nights or The Master not on this list, but Magnolia is? I'm not saying Magnolia isn't a good movie. I like it. But it's definitely not Paul Thomas Anderson's best, at least not in my opinion. I wouldn't even put it in his top 3 best movies. Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Yeah, I'm sorry. I love horror movies, okay? I am a big horror movie person, but Texas Chainsaw Massacre is just not really my type of horror movie. Very creepy movie. Definitely one of the creepiest movies ever. And I would say, yeah, it is a perfect movie for what it is. It's basically a B slasher movie, but it's like the best B slasher movie. It's just got some of the most gruesome scenes you'll find in any slasher flick. One of the most memorable villains. That fish hook scene, ugh. Too much for me, too much. The Tree of Life. This goes into the I'm sorry tier. I understand why it's on this list. Definitely some of the best cinematography you'll see in any movie. But yeah, I've said it before. The Tree of Life is kind of a snoozer. At least it is for me. I don't really want to call it pretentious, but yeah, I don't know. All right, you already know Goodfellas is an infinite rewatch. This is my favorite Scorsese movie. I love how this entire movie is basically edited like a movie trailer. It has got such an insane frenetic pacing to it, but at the same time, even though it does have that frenetic pacing, it does such a great job of developing all these characters. And I know everyone talks about it already, but that one tracking shot scene where they're walking into the club with "And Then He Kissed Me" by the Crystals playing in the background, just such a great scene. That might be one of the best tracking shots of all time. I mean, everyone says that, but they say it for a reason because it's true. Infinite rewatch, easy. Paris, Texas goes into the proper classic tier. This movie tugs on your heartstrings more than almost any other movie I've ever seen. Extremely emotionally powerful, almost to the point that it's actually kind of manipulative. I really don't want to spoil anything, that's why I can't really go into it, but yeah, I'll just say this. Paris, Texas is an emotional roller coaster of a movie. It's going to pull on all of your heartstrings. It's going to get you super invested into it, but then you're going to be thinking about it afterwards and you're going to be like, wait, hold up, what did this guy just do? Nosferatu, the original 1922 silent film. Yeah, it's good, whatever. I mean, look, I respect Nosferatu because it is one of the best silent films I've seen. I will admit, silent films are a little bit of a blind spot for me. I know a lot of them are really great. A lot of people even go as far as to say that the silent era was the best era of filmmaking because filmmakers had to rely completely on images to tell the story and not rely on dialogue and exposition. I get that argument. It's like filmmaking in its purest form. But if I'm just gonna be real, okay, I respect silent films more than I actually enjoy them. And I'm not saying that Nosferatu isn't enjoyable. It is an enjoyable movie. I saw Nosferatu one time. I thought it was really good, but that's probably about it. That's probably enough Nosferatu for me. The Wizard of Oz also goes into the yeah is good whatever tier. I understand why it's on the list. Incredibly groundbreaking, innovative movie. The Technicolor still looks great to this day. It is a really good movie, but every time I watch this movie, I can't help but be very creeped out by it, especially knowing all the behind the scenes stuff that happened. They were straight up dumping asbestos on all the actors, and that doesn't even scratch the surface of all the crazy stuff that was happening behind the scenes in this movie. Every time I'm watching The Wizard of Oz, I'm just thinking about all this fucked up shit that was happening, and it's just kind of ruins it for me a little bit. The Matrix, and yes, I actually did a double take when I saw that this was in the Sight and Sound Top 250. I didn't realize that this movie was actually that respected by the British Film Institute. Hey, I am happy. So yeah, The Matrix goes into the infinite rewatch tier. And I've heard the criticisms, okay, especially some of the acting performances and Neo and Trinity's romance. Very valid criticisms, but I don't even care because this movie is just awesome in every single way. Awesome sci-fi concept, absolute perfect pacing in the first and second act. This movie just hooks you immediately and just strings you along for the ride. And I'm not even saying that to downplay the third act, because the third act is awesome. That's when they do all the crazy bullet time effects. But the first and second act are the best parts of this movie, in my opinion. The way this movie just lets the story unfold as it goes on, ooh, it's just amazing. I love The Matrix. Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. Yeah, it's good, whatever. I mean, I immensely respect Psycho. I understand how important this movie was for both the horror and thriller genres, but I do think it is one of those cases where this movie is so influential that going back to it after the fact, it kind of diminishes how great it was at the time, because you've just seen so many other movies that have been influenced by this that it doesn't feel as groundbreaking or new as it must have probably felt at the time. And now there's Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo. The British Film Institute's got this number 2 of all time. A lot of people might say that that's overrated, but I'm okay with that. I love Vertigo. I think number 2 is actually a pretty valid spot for this movie. Now, I do kind of wish I had seen Jean Dielman 23 Quai du Commerce in its entirety so I could have put it on this list and roast this movie. Jean Dielman, apparently the best movie ever made. I tried sitting through it. I got maybe about like an hour and a half into the movie, probably not even like an hour into the movie, and I couldn't do it. I understand why people love it. It's like so experimental and all that, but dude, come on. Like, I don't want to just sit there for 3 hours watching a woman do chores in her apartment. No, thank you. But yeah, I got a little bit sidetracked there. I'm going to put Vertigo into the cream of the crop. Vertigo is amazing. Not a perfect movie, but I can see why it is the number 2 movie of all time. There's literally like a 15-minute stretch of this movie where there's no dialogue, no speaking whatsoever. It's just 15 minutes of a guy following someone in a car, and it is like the most tension-filled 15 minutes of any movie. And on top of that, the movie is just beautiful. Every frame literally looks like a painting. And overall, it's just a very intriguing psychological thriller. I love Vertigo. Easily goes into the cream of the crop tier. And Rear Window, this is probably my second favorite Hitchcock movie. I'll put that into the proper classic. I mean, it's Hitchcock. What else can I say? Everyone knows he's the master of suspense and tension. Rear Window is one of the best examples of that. Okay, Jaws. This is kind of a tough one to rank. I don't know if I would put it into the yeah, it's good, whatever, or proper classic. I'll be charitable. I'll put it in the proper classic tier because I do get why it's on this list. I mean, yeah, it's pretty much a monster movie about a shark eating people, but Spielberg is such a god tier director that he turns that into this absolute piece of cinema. It's so epic, and it actually does have a really good screenplay with some really great characters. It's a very entertaining movie. Some aspects of it don't quite hold up, but overall, as a movie, it is just still really great. I'll put it in the proper classic tier. I think that's fair for Jaws. The Godfather Part 1, it insists upon itself. Just kidding. It's an infinite rewatch. What am I really going to say about The Godfather? We all know that The Godfather is a great movie. Everyone knows that. We could just move on to The Godfather Part 2. So I just want to point out that the British Film Institute, they know what's up. They got the first Godfather ranked at number 12, and they got Godfather Part 2 ranked at 104. They know what's up. I'm always hearing these people saying how The Godfather Part 2 is better than Godfather Part 1. I mean, look, The Godfather Part 2 is a great movie, but is it really better than Part 1? Like, why? I feel like everything that The Godfather Part 2 has to say was already said in the first Godfather movie. Yes, The Godfather Part 2 is the completion of Michael Corleone's story arc, but I feel like that was already implied at the ending of the first Godfather movie. I understand that it's all adapted from one book, so it is all one story, but I feel like you could just watch Godfather Part 1 and understand completely what this story has to say and understand Michael Corleone as a character. I'll still put Godfather Part 2 into the proper classic tier because, I mean, it is a great movie. I love The Godfather Part 2. A Clockwork Orange, yeah, it's good, whatever. Not my favorite Kubrick movie. I do think it's great. It's got all of the things that make all Kubrick movies great. You already know what they are. But for me personally, if I'm going to throw on a Kubrick movie, A Clockwork Orange is kind of low on the list. I wish Eyes Wide Shut was on here and not A Clockwork Orange. I know a lot of people don't like Eyes Wide Shut. I don't care. It's my favorite Kubrick movie. That should be on this list. The 400 Blows. I've definitely kind of glazed up Francois Truffaut quite a bit on this channel, and I think it's for good reason because The 400 Blows is a proper classic. It's a great movie. This is definitely my favorite of the French New Wave films that I've seen, and I'm glad that it made it onto the Sight and Sound Top 250 list. Everything about this movie is just so nostalgic. It just reminds you of this rebellious mentality you had as a kid, but it's also very sad at the same time. And I could be totally off base on this, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure the French New Wave people were pretty much the first directors who started using jump cuts in movies. That's kind of crazy to me to think that people just weren't doing jump cuts before that. Then the French New Wave critics just come in and they start adding jump cuts to movies, and it's like, oh yeah, that was a really good idea. That works. Spirited Away definitely goes into proper classic. Actually, you know what? I'm going to put Spirited Away into cream of the crop just because this is honestly probably the best animated movie I've ever seen. Is it my favorite animated movie? Probably not. And that's only because my favorite animated movies are the ones that I watched as a kid. But in terms of animated movies I watched later on in life, Spirited Away definitely is the best animated movie I've ever seen. It is just such an amazing film. It doesn't matter if you're not an animation person, if you're not into anime. Like, I'm not really an anime person, but you should still watch Spirited Away if for some reason you haven't seen it. It is an amazing movie. I think almost anyone who watches it would like it. Taxi Driver, I'm going to put into the proper classic tier. I love Taxi Driver. I do think it's a great movie. A lot of people say that this is Scorsese's best movie. I see where they're coming from. This is my big hot take, okay? I kind of low-key like King of Comedy better than I like Taxi Driver. I'm not saying that King of Comedy is better than Taxi Driver, okay? The thing that Taxi Driver has over King of Comedy is the setting. The way that Scorsese recreated that 1970s New York setting in Taxi Driver and just created that atmosphere and made you feel like you were entering into Travis Bickle's world, that was truly amazing. King of Comedy doesn't quite have that. But I don't know. I think King of Comedy is just Taxi Driver, but with better pacing and an even crazier character. Raiders of the Lost Ark, y'all already know it, infinite rewatch. I don't care what anyone says, the Indiana Jones original trilogy is one of the best blockbuster franchises of all time, if not the best. Okay, I would probably put Lord of the Rings above Indiana Jones for me personally, but other than Lord of the Rings, I don't think anything can go toe-to-toe with Indiana Jones. I love Indiana Jones. Raiders of the Lost Ark, I think, is the best of the 3 Indiana Jones movies. I love all 3 of them. They're all amazing. Obviously, Steven Spielberg with his action set pieces and John Williams with the music and Harrison Ford. I mean, that is the golden trio of a blockbuster movie. But you also got to give a lot of credit to the screenplay for this movie. It is so good. And the way that this movie is able to set up Indiana Jones as a character and immediately get you to think that this is the coolest guy ever. He's awesome. Not a perfect dude. He's actually kind of a dick, but he's awesome. Yes, Mad Max Fury Road did in fact make it into the Sight and Sound Top 250. Some people might say it's a little bit overhyped. I don't think so. I think Mad Max deserves it. I'm going to put it into the proper classic tier. Under the Skin, I can kind of see why this made it onto this list. It truly is one of the most unique movies to come out in the last 20 years or so. Very beautifully shot movie, super weird, but I don't know. This just seems a little bit much to put this into the Sight and Sound Top 2. I don't know. Okay, someone who loves this movie, please tell me why I'm wrong. Tell me why this movie deserves its spot and why this is truly one of the greatest movies of all time. I'm not saying it's not good. I think it is a good movie, but it's just like, really? This is one of the best movies of all time? I don't know about that. Parasite, I'm going to put it into the cream of the crop. Not saying it's a perfect movie, but out of all the movies from the 2010s, this is definitely the one where I'm like, okay, yeah, that definitely makes sense to put it into the top 250 movies of all time. I really do think Parasite, as soon as it came out, everyone knew it was an instant classic. Portrait of a Lady on Fire, yeah, it's good, whatever. I've said it before, I'll say it again. This movie does kind of feel like it was made in a lab to be the perfect movie to appeal to critics. Literally checks every single box to be a critic darling, but I'm not saying that means it's not a good movie, okay? It is a good movie. Portrait of a Lady on Fire is great, okay? You should definitely watch it if you haven't seen it. It's great, okay? Whatever. Possession from 1982. Very glad that this was able to make it onto this list. I was actually kind of surprised to see it on there. I'm going to put Possession into the cream of the crop. I'm not necessarily going to recommend this movie to everyone out there because I know for a fact a lot of people would just absolutely hate this movie if they saw it. It's not a movie for everyone, but if you were into super weird and bizarre psychological horror movies and you don't mind some really over-the-top crazy acting performances, you will like Possession. It's a crazy, crazy movie. I'm pretty sure when this thing came out, it got banned in multiple countries, and yeah, I can definitely see why. Alien, yeah, I'm glad Alien made the list. I'm definitely more of an Aliens guy. I like the sequel a little bit better, but the first Alien movie is awesome. I'm definitely going to put that into proper classic. But actually, you know what? I'm going to put Alien into cream of the crop. I got to put Alien into the cream of the crop just because the Xenomorph, dude. The Xenomorph and Ripley. One of the coolest monsters in any horror movie ever. And one of the coolest final girls in any horror movie ever. The Shining also goes into the cream of the crop because I think it's got some of the best world building you will ever see in any horror movie. And it's also just insanely creepy, and it's got all of the hallmarks of a great Stanley Kubrick movie. I mean, just watch the opening credit shot. That is insane. All right, Moonlight. Yeah, I'm sorry. I understand that this is a great movie, but it's just not my thing, man. Like, yeah, okay, beautiful cinematography, amazing color grading, amazing acting performances, harrowing story that exposes and sheds light to some of the biggest injustices in our society. Yeah, I get it, but at the same time, I just can't really ever see myself being in a mood to want to rewatch this movie. And while I was watching it, I was like, okay, yeah, this is good, but it kind of just felt like a chore to watch it. And actually, you know what? I'm going to downgrade this into the Y tier because, like, yeah, it is a great movie, but is it really that good? Like, this feels like in some insane recency bias to have this make it into the Sight and Sound top 250. But I'm just saying, me personally, Moonlight feels like a bit of a questionable choice, but hey, that's okay. It's their call. You know it. There Will Be Blood, you know where it's going. It's going into the Infinite Rewatch tier. You saw the title of this video, okay? You know where There Will Be Blood is going. I wasn't kidding with the title of the video. You see what movies I like to rewatch the most. That's just how it is, okay? I like what I like. There Will Be Blood is a movie. I have rewatched it at least 10 times. Never gets old. I fucking love this movie. I'm sorry. And actually, I don't even know why I'd say this because I'm pretty sure everyone agrees that this is an amazing movie. It's actually not my favorite Paul Thomas Anderson movie. That would be Boogie Nights, but There Will Be Blood is definitely a close second. Do the Right Thing from Spike Lee. Yeah, I don't know if this would go into proper classic or yeah, it's good, whatever. I'm gonna put this into yeah, it's good, whatever. I mean, yeah, it is a really good movie. It's got an amazing ending, by the way. Although I will say it is kind of one of those movies where like the theme of the movie and what the movie has to say is the star of the movie. So if you want to just watch a movie because you want to watch a movie and be entertained, Do the Right Thing probably not going to be the best movie to watch when you're in that mood. Blade Runner, at this point, you know where it's going. It's an infinite rewatch, okay? I am very predictable, okay? I never claimed to be otherwise. The movies that are going in the infinite rewatch here are the movies that I have rewatched the most times. John Carpenter's The Thing. This is a lot of people's favorite sci-fi horror movie of all time. I think this movie actually got completely panned by critics the time it came out. Glad to see that over the years it's kind of moved up the critic hierarchy to the point where the British Film Institute's got it in the top 250. I'm gonna put The Thing into proper classic. I can't believe you only put The Thing into proper classic and not the cream of the crop. Okay, like these are all great movies. That's why they're in the Sight and Sound top 250. The Thing is great, okay? And I'm not talking about the movie, although the movie is great. No, I'm talking about The Thing. The thing in the movie that the movie is named after is awesome. Casablanca goes into the yeah, it's good, whatever tier. It is good. I think it is a really great movie. One of the best screenplays of all time. One of the most well-directed movies of all time. But you know, not every movie can go into the top tiers, okay? I don't know. I guess it just doesn't have enough edge for me. Oh yeah, and by the way, I think Casablanca, of all the romance movies ever made, Casablanca is the romance movie that every dad will love. Everyone says that 2001: A Space Odyssey is probably the best looking movie ever made, but I don't even think it's Stanley Kubrick's best looking movie. That would be Barry Lyndon. Barry Lyndon is actually the single most aesthetically beautiful movie I have ever seen. Everyone says this about this movie, that every single scene literally looks like a Renaissance painting. And yeah, I mean, that is very true. That is exactly accurate description of this movie. A lot of people definitely would probably find it a little bit boring. The movie is not boring. I'm not saying it's boring. It is just very long and slow and deliberate. You just have to be in the right mood for it. But when you are in a mood to watch like a 3.5 hour super slow but epic beautiful movie, you got to check out Barry Lyndon. The only issue I have with this movie is the main character played by Ryan O'Neal. I just don't think Ryan O'Neal quite pulls off this character, but at the end of the day, that is pretty minor complaint. I still think it is an amazing movie. I'm gonna put this into the cream of the crop. Okay, Videodrome. I'm gonna say, yeah, it's good, whatever. Videodrome is a movie that should be exactly up my alley. It's an extremely weird, bizarre, psychological body horror movie. I should absolutely love Videodrome, and I love aspects of this movie, but overall, it's one of those movies where it's like, yeah, I loved certain scenes in this movie, and I love the overall vibe and idea behind it, but there was just parts where I was like, okay, is this thing gonna be over anytime soon? Beau Travail, all I will say is beautiful cinematography, not really what I was expecting from a movie about the French Foreign Legion, but in the best way. Beau Travail goes into the cream of the crop. And lastly, we have Star Wars, the original Star Wars movie. It's definitely not my favorite Star Wars movie, although it is up there. Obviously, this is an infinite rewatch. I love Star Wars. That's it. That's the tier list.